And what a dummy! Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft Podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. My name is Bruce Wilkinson, and joining me in the booth, we have a very special guest. We've been blessed with some great and knowledgeable guests this pre-season, but we've got a treat for you today. Joining us is New Zealand rugby royalty, Scotty Stevenson from Sky Sports. How are you, mate?
Yeah, you obviously ran out of all the knowledgeable guests, so you've landed on me, Bruce. Great to be here, mate. Great to be with you.
We know it's a busy time of the year for you, so we really appreciate you pulling in.
All good.
I guess the first question is, how's your pre-season?
Pre-season's been really busy actually. It's interesting when you come back from your holidays, and it's about a month now between rugby seasons for us, between the Sevens broadcast at the end of one year and the next Sevens at the start of the next. So, rolling straight into the Sevens program with the Nationals, and then into Wellington, then Sydney. And then by the time you get back from that and you realise that Super Rugby is only a couple of weeks away, things tend to ramp up. So that's the way it's felt. And I know the teams have kind of felt like everything's concertinaed on them. They get a little bit excited about pre-season, then the Christmas break, and all of a sudden they realise that they're into game time, which is exactly where we are this week.
I'll tell you what, it's been quite good to see. A lot of those pre-season games are actually now appearing on Sky Sports, and there's a few streams here and there. So this is great for fantasy rugby draft managers. It's their first look in at the teams and what potentially might happen in the season. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, it was great for us too certainly to broadcast the Chiefs Blues last week, which was the final headout for both teams. And I've enjoyed watching some of the streaming of those pre-season games as well. I listen to a lot of people, and there's part of me that agrees with them that you can't take too much from pre-season. But believe you me, the players aren't going out there to lose. So some of those results, you can take little things away, and you can certainly see what teams are trying to achieve, albeit not maybe with their starting lineups.
So in this podcast, we're going to have a look at the New Zealand squads with Scotty. I know Mossman and I ran our eye over on Friday, but we've had another weekend of pre-season, and since we've got Scotty here, we thought we'd get someone who actually knew what they were talking about. I can
He probably knows more than I do, though, Bruce.
I don't know. I can say that because he's not on the podcast. Anyway, a little bit of admin. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rug Draft. That's Fantasy RUG Draft. Or on Facebook. Or if you have any long-winded questions about this time of year, it's support at fantasyrugbydraft.com. Scotty's on Twitter. He's at Sumo Stevenson, I believe. Is that right, mate?
I am at Sumo Stevenson on Twitter, mate, and various other things as well on the Instagrams. But, like my phone message, mate, all entries go into the draw to be one person I respond to every week. So, there you go. No, it's good fun. And, when I'm commentating games too, I always leave my Twitter feed open, and you never know what you're going to get through your feed when you're commentating games, both the abuse and the help as well.
We're always amazed that when you're commentating away that we see the tweets that you put out there. Men aren't supposed to do that. Not multitasking.
No, it's not too much. There's a lot of breakages and stoppages in rugby games, so you've always got time to catch up. And it's quite amazing. Quite often a lot of the players' friends and family get in touch with you if you've mispronounced something, or they give you a little bit of tidbit of information to use. And especially their club mates always like you to get their nicknames into a call as well, especially if they're a little bit below the line. So it's always good to hear from the listeners and the viewers.
100% constructive feedback, no doubt.
90% of the time, and the other 10%'s actually quite funny, so we'll just take it as that.
I'm sure it is. So a little bit of admin. Make sure you join your draft or join your league before that 2-hour lock. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do about getting you into your draft and into your league for this season. Just gutting to see that happening. Right. Let's kick into the teams. I guess, first of all, let's start with the carryover champs, the Highlanders down south.
Yes.
What do you think? I guess, first of all, overall for the Highlanders this season?
Well, I think they'll have their share of struggles because of what they achieved last year, and I don't think I'm alone in that point of view. Now, I'm not saying they'll struggle because their playing roster has changed markedly. It hasn't. As we know, they've got some pretty good stability down there. Losing Nasi Manu, that's a big loss for any team to get over because he's pretty inspirational, Nasi. But they have brought in Liam Squire, who didn't enjoy his time in Hamilton, so he's come south to Dunedin, where I think he'll fit in much better, not from a team culture point of view, but just from a surroundings point of view. We know that Liam's a pretty special player. player when he's on. And the Highlanders rotate around a lot of big ball carrying forwards. We saw that from Elliot Dixon last year, certainly from Nasi Manu. So they need their loosies to get some parity at the very least in order to get their game firing and for Aaron Smith to get to the breakdown pretty quickly. So, I think that they're going to have a challenge first up. I think the Blues are going to come out hissing in round one, and they've got a bit of an extra travel burden, the Highlanders. So, those factors notwithstanding, I still think they should be one of the favoured teams because of their settled lineup and because of their pretty much settled coaching lineup as well.
Yeah, so we've always felt as though Liam Squire was, he picked up a few injuries here and there, and he always seemed as though that they say that a break's also just as good as a new start. So we wonder if going down to the Highlanders might be kind of his sort of rejuvenation.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And watching him in ITM Cup for Tasman, you can't deny that the man's got some real ability. But Shane Christie's been running quite the scouting program on behalf of his coach, hasn't he? And the co-captain this year, I think he's got as many of his Tasman teammates down as possible. So, they've got a good lineup, and I'm really excited to see the continuing growth of James Lynchies as well, the number 7. I don't know how much game time he's going to get, considering he's behind Shane Christie and Dan Pryor's also in the mix. But I thought James did a really good job for the Highlanders when called apart. He made his debut last year, actually, against Skelp Berger, who was playing his 100th game. And, he did not embarrass himself against what you could arguably say one of the great players of our generation.
Yeah, I saw some photos that were on Twitter or posted.
They did indeed. Yeah, they had 45 minutes together. I happened to be in the pub with them at the time, and I may have told James to buy 2 beers and take one to Skelk, and he went over and chatted to him for 45 minutes and came away buzzing. And Skelk is one of the nicest blokes you'll ever hope to meet outside the field of play, and probably the worst bloke you could ever meet in the field of play. So it was great to see.
I see you and James park your car in the same garage in terms of haircuts, high and to the left.
Oh, mate, I've got no choice. I'm fighting a battle on 2 fronts. I'm retreating from the front and the middle, so I've had to use a hasty redeployment to the front of my face just to make sure that I've still got some hair.
Yeah, we know that feeling on the side of the fence. I guess for fantasy rugby draft managers, one of the main questions was around the injury to Barracuda. He was a bit of the gel in the team. They've got a few options there, don't they? We've got 3, I think. So
yeah.
Which way do you think it's probably going to go?
Yeah, well, there are. Rob Thompson's come down from Canterbury, obviously, and Rob's a man with some very good ball running ability, and that's what they'll want. They love a 12 at the Highlanders who takes the line up and just runs straight. Treby was very good for them in that department last year. I know what you're saying about Buckman in terms of his place in the team culture, but I think he was more than that. I thought Buckman's versatility and out-and-out ability was one of the defining factors of the Highlanders season. I don't think we can underestimate just how much they're going to miss Richard Buckman on the field. I know they'll miss him off the field, but on the field, I thought he was superb. No more so than in that game against the Waratahs in the semi-final, where, his injection into the game and his ability to break the game open was to the fore. So they will certainly miss Buckman. One guy we haven't seen a lot of is Jason Emery. Is it time for Jason maybe to have that breakthrough season we've been waiting for? He's been there or thereabouts. He's a former National Age Group Player of the Year. I think that goes back to 2012, maybe 2013, if memory serves. So he's been on the radar for some time. Injuries hampered Jace. And Tay Walden has come up through the Otago system as well. So Tony Brown knows Te Horangi very well. And perhaps Tay Walden is the type of guy who might just fit in there. And Matt Fadders can play a bit of 12 too. So I think they've got cover in the midfield. And they've got their big weapon in Malakai Fekitoa. So I think what they'll be wanting from their 12 is a little bit of simplicity.
And I was going to ask you about Rob Thompson. I understand Nepo Lalala and I understand Don Bird going for opportunities up to the Chiefs, but Rob Thompson going down to the Highlanders just seemed a little odd, especially with forming such a good partnership with Crotty in the midfield.
Yeah, well, look, I can't put my finger on it, but, when you're at the Crusaders, there's spaces, and not everyone can come through the system. And we're starting to see more and more of the Canterbury boys look further afield. In days of yore, it was basically a transitional team, the ITM Cup team. You did your apprenticeship for Scott Robertson or Rob Penny, and then you moved on up into Todd Blackadder's realm. So I think this will be good for Rob Thompson to get out of that system and go down to the Highlanders and see what he can prove. Again, I say about Rob, he's a big ball-carrying midfielder, so I'm pretty sure that's what Tony Brown and Jamie Joseph are looking for from him.
And I guess there's a 12 spot available in the All Blacks as well. I guess there'll be a few vying for that position. There'll be another podcast, I guess.
Well, that's right. And look, it's a go-to position right now, isn't it? You know, the Martin Nonu, Conrad Smith era is over. Malakai Fekitoa hasn't cemented himself as an All Black just yet. So you've really got two All Black positions, I think, very much up for grabs. It's going to be one of the great treats of Super Rugby from a New Zealand perspective to see which 12s and which 13s put their hand up all season long, and they're going to have to put their hand up pretty much from day one, I would think.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look back in, I think it was Super Rugby about 2 or 3 years ago, the 4 finalists were the Brumbies, Sharks, Crusaders and Waratahs, and they all had ball-playing 12s, Stain, Beale, Carter and Lealiafano at the time. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we're seeing more creative centres as well. And a little bit of interchangeability has maybe come into coaches' viewpoints on centre. We'll get to the Blues a bit later, but if you look around there and look at Mali Sal alongside George Moala, alongside Rennie Ranger, you've got 3 guys there who can probably play either 12 or 13 and do so effectively. So maybe versatility is the key word for midfielders in terms of what Super Rugby coaches are looking for at the moment.
And if I put you on the spot and said who's going to be that 12 for the opening game against the Blues, who do you reckon it might be?
Well, that's a great question. Look, you've got to say that Malakai Fekitoa locks down centre, and I think they may just see what Rob Thompson can offer straight off the bat and see if he's up to the task. That would be my viewpoint, unless they want to go a little bit more conservative and put Jason Emery, who's been around the system for a little bit longer. But you're talking about apples and oranges there. Jace is a more elusive, a smaller player, and Rob Thompson's your cart horse. So, look, it's going to really depend on what coaches McLeod, De Brown and Joseph are looking for to do. And against the Blues team too, let's not forget, they're going to come at you in midfield. So for round one, you're going to want someone who can stop players at 12.
So last year the Highlanders loved their catchphrases, the nobody believed in us, that type of thing. They can't do that. They can't do that this year. What do you think it might be this season?
Well, I think you can't go past let's do it again. Same old. You know, they're going to have a lot of confidence coming into this season. We know that how good their environment is, how much they've worked on their culture, and just how tight they are down there. There's 2 factors for that. You know, it's a mongrel team. They come from everywhere, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but it's a team of mongrels. And you know, there's a beating heart of Otago players there, but if you look around the traps and, you know, look at their starting lineup on the weekend, you know, you've got a Cantabrian, an Otago player, you've got a Waikato player, you've got Joe Wheeler down from Tasman, Luke Whitelock down from Canterbury, Liam Squires come from the Chiefs, Aaron Smith from Manawatu, Lima Sopoanga from Wellington. The list goes on. So, you know, this is not an Otago side, it's a Highlanders side. And what they've been able to do over the last couple of seasons, and which came to fruition last year, was really hone in on what made them all special as a group. So, you know, I know they had a bit of a siege mentality last year, that whole reverse psychology of no one believes in us. Well, you're damn right they believe in them now. So I just think it's business as usual. Let's go out there and let's work 5% harder than we did last year. If they can do that, well, they're a chance of going at least to the playoffs and even looking at a back-to-back title.
Okay, that's probably enough for the Highlanders. Let's move up the mainland to the Crusaders. I guess the first question from the weekend was, what the hell was that?
Nobody knows, and no one really wants to talk about it. And least of all, I imagine Todd Blackadder, who this year and his last year of coaching has taken over the defensive role. So it's not a great start for Toddy in his final hit out before the season begins. Look, I just don't know what went on there in Blenheim. I haven't seen the game, but you know, when a team runs in 12 tries against you and pumps you 74-7. You're going to have to start asking some questions. And when you look at the team that lined up there, that wasn't a bad side. I mean, you know, you've got some good players and some real ballers in there. Look, I think they got punished a little bit through the inside channel, so some defensive work maybe. You know, Mitchell Drummond and Richie Mo-unga, we know have combined really well at ITM Cup level, and I believe Richie Mo-unga is going to be the first cab off the rank in terms of first 5 play. So, look, some question marks over just what they were trying to achieve, because they didn't achieve much, I don't think, except to take a real punishing blow a week before the season starts. The old adage about the Crusaders starting slowly, well, it may still apply. They've got the Chiefs first up, which is never easy, but at least they'll have home advantage. So I guess we look at the Hurricanes. They got pumped by 40 points against the Blues in Ekatahuna and then turned that around against the Crusaders. So maybe this was just a wake-up call for a Crusaders side that is starting a bit sleepy as usual.
And that's what I was going to say. You touched on a point there, is that it wasn't a bad Crusaders team. It still had a few names in there. I guess the concern for me was going into the game, I guess a lot of people thought it was Richie Mo-unga's gig that looked like it had. He'd started a couple of games in pre-season. But I heard that Laumape had a really, really good game. And obviously that tends to suggest that he was going down those channels, down that inside channel, and you wonder whether or not that maybe there's a defensive fragility there that Black had, as you pointed out. He's a defensive coach. So I guess ultimately the question is, who do you see in Richie Mo-unga? You think so? That's the best of the options? Yep,
that's right. And we'll look at their options. I mean, they've got Marty there, who's got a little bit more maturity in terms of controlling a game, and you've also got Ben Volavola, who I'm not convinced of just yet. That's not to say Ben can't come on through the season, but you know, I've seen Ben play for Fiji, and it didn't look as organised in a Crusaders way that they would need. They want someone who can give them some good front foot, and they work that lateral play quite a lot. So they need a first five who's got vision and can distribute very, very well. But I still think Mo-unga will start the season, and I still think that the Crusaders have enough in the tank to come out of this little setback and get moving. But if you take Marty McKenzie and put him at fullback, does that lose you a little bit in terms of fullback cover? Because Mo-unga's an out-and-out 10 in my eyes, and probably Ben Volavola is as well. So, Marty McKenzie's your one guy there who can probably cover 10 and 15.
So we were quite happy to hear the Richie Mo-unga. Personally, as a Crusaders fan, I'm quite happy. I just thought that Blackadder might go with Mackenzie's experience.
Yeah, I don't know about Marty. I mean, it's a big move for him to go down there, and he's come into a new system, and he's had his time at the Chiefs, obviously, and taken this role at the Crusaders. And knowing Marty as I do, he would have gone down there hoping that he'd land the starting spot. So I don't know if they're foxing a little bit here in terms of what they're going to do with Marty. He obviously didn't play on the weekend against the Hurricanes, so if there's some injury concern there, I don't know about. That will reveal itself over the coming week. But, Marty's got some real ability. We've seen that with Taranaki. We've seen that in ITM Cup, and in limited opportunities for the Chiefs, we've seen it too. So if they can get a system working around Marty McKenzie, I think he'll feature at some stage during the season for sure.
Okay, interesting. So, as I say, I think we're happy that Richie was going to start. I thought he might have been a bit more of a longer-term option for the Crusaders. There's a young kid coming through. I think you'll probably know who he is as well from the Straven Road Academy, Josh McKay as well, and he won't be too far away. But I think it'll be an interesting pairing between Richie Mo-unga and... Do we think it's going to be Andy Ellis at halfback, or do you think it'll be Mitchell Drummond, or do you think it's a little bit horses for courses and they're just going to share duties?
Well, that's right. In turn, Mitchell Drummond's still coming on as a player. Yeah, there's no doubt Mitchell Drummond will fit right into the Crusaders program, but, he's got Andy Ellis as well. He certainly is the old head, but, Andy's probably not going to last 70 minutes in a game of rugby, given, just how much footy he's played over his career. So, Drummond's really got to step up this season, and that's going to be interesting to see if he can. I know that he showed glimpses of his own individual brilliance, but the combination at 9 and 10, that's going to be critical for the Crusaders, and we're a long way past the heydays of the Carters and Ellises.
We sure are. So who do you think is going to chime into that midfield then? I saw David Havili was playing fullback. Is he going to come in and start in that midfield?
Well, he may do. I mean, Sean Wainui's got some real abilities. New Zealand Māori player, and, I think there's some big raps on Sean. He is a big, tall, rangy 12. So, just how they use that, and Kieran Fonatia is another one. They're two very big men. I don't know how they mix it up. David Havili spent a lot of time at 12 for the Crusaders, or has spent time at 12 for the Crusaders. So there's always a chance they move in. I can't see them moving into Mani Ndolo into centre. So I think they're going to have to just paper over until they get the likes of Ryan Crotty back. They'll miss Crotty until he's back fit and ready to go. I think he's one of the most underrated players in New Zealand, Ryan Crotty, in terms of his organisation, certainly on defence. and given the scoreline last week, they really need a defensive organiser there. Kieran's real talent is not, I don't think, in defensive organisation. Good with ball in hand and that very traditional Crusaders centre way. But, they miss Crotty's voice out there, especially when you've got a young 10 and 9, and you've got some real speedsters at the back, and, they're not big communicators. So to have a Crotty there is going to be crucial, and hopefully he's back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, look, we couldn't agree more with you around the Ryan Crotty being underrated. He's a great part of that team. He always seems to pop at the right time, and he's part of that senior leadership team. I guess one question for Fantasy Rugby Draft users is looking at the Crusaders front row. Is it going to be Cody Taylor or is it going to be Ben Fennell? Because the All Blacks obviously went with Cody Taylor. Is it Fennell or them?
Yeah, really interesting. Cody Taylor's leapfrog Ben Fennell in terms of the All Blacks pecking order, which would have really dented Ben Fennell's confidence. Ben came into that side. Corey Flynn was coming to the end of his tenure at the Crusaders, and Corey Flynn made Ben Fennell work very, very hard for his place in that team. Cody comes out of the Fielding High Rugby Academy alongside the likes of Sam Whitelock and the Whitelock boys and others. So I would be tempted to start Cody Taylor. Frankly, because, a guy like that who's obviously had a big confidence boost and has got a World Cup winners medal, I think probably deserves to have a crack first up. Ben Fennell, I think, to me, is in a similar mould to Andrew Hoare. And what made Andrew Hoare such a great finisher in a game of code was his defensive ability, certainly over the ball. I thought he was the best turnover hooker in world rugby over the last few years of his career, and I think Fennell's got many of those same attributes. But in set piece, they're probably like for like. Cody Taylor just gives you a little bit more explosiveness around the field, and I think that's pretty obvious in why the All Black selectors chose him, given their preference for Dane Coles too. So you've got Taylor and Coles, really, I think, who start the year as the two form hookers, and everyone else trying to develop a skill set that has some parity with those two, which is easier said than done.
That's true. I guess one question is, how do you think the Crusaders will go in the McCaw period?
Yeah, I just don't know. The Crusaders continue to get bookie favouritism based on legacy, I think. Look, I'll tell you a couple of names to look at. I think Scott Barrett's due a very big year. He'll partner with Sam Whitelock most likely for the season. I think that locking combination is pretty much set. Whitelock, he's a lock every week, isn't he? No pun intended. And I think Barrett's going to have a good season. He's a very talented football. One maybe that people haven't got on their radars in terms of fantasy is Mitchell Dunshea, young boy coming through the Canterbury system, and Dunshea can ball. He's a very good player. And another guy we didn't see last year due to injury, broke his arm, was Johnny Mutherlai, the Northland speedster. If they can get some good miles out of him, then, the Crusaders just might be able to get back to some really big scores. And they weren't far off topping the average points per game last year, so it's still a team that can score plenty of tries. Yeah,
we know Mossman, he was pumping Johnny Mutherlai as well. He had him in his team, and he's a big fan of his.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people were disappointed not to see him play, and not least of all the Crusaders coaching staff, I can tell you that.
Yeah, of course. Okay, that's probably enough about the Crusaders. Let's move up to the Hurricanes, the beaten finalists last year. I guess the big question is who's going to replace Manonu and Conrad Smith in that midfield?
Yeah, well, I think Ngani Laumapi may well have just sealed the deal. The fact he was so damaging, and that's what all reports say from the weekend. Peter Aki is one to watch, and Willis Halaholo as well. I mean, Willis could do with a big confidence boost. He had one crack last year, and it didn't come off for him really. He may be back in the mixer. When you lose guys like Conrad and Maha, it's a really tough space to fill, and they will know that. But Ngani Laumapi offers us some genuine excitement. Vince Aso, who got the start against the Crusaders in Blenheim, he may well be a go-to guy. They'll be looking forward to getting Proctor back in the mix, I'll tell you that much. He's a very damaging player, Matt Proctor. Not just in midfield too, he can shoot out onto the wing and he can play fullback as well. So there's some real bench versatility with Proctor. I don't think they'll change too much from what we saw on the weekend. I think Laumapi and Aso going so well, that may well be the midfield combination to start the season over there in Canberra against the Brumbies. And that's a fixture too, by the way, that has favoured the away side for quite some time in the careers of those two teams. So the Hurricanes won't be scared of going back and playing their semi-final opponents again in Canberra first up.
Yeah, true. So we think it's probably Laumape's job at 12. He's kind of cut from a similar cloth as Nonu going into the season?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I saw him play live at Ekatahuna down there watching the Blues game, and he's got some real touches of brilliance, Ngani Laumapi, and there's a lot of excitement around all the league converts back in Super Rugby this year. I know there's some genuine excitement about Glenn Fisiahi at the Chiefs, and certainly about Matt Duffy at the Blues. So, it could be a year to really keep an eye on those league converts because they bring a certain skill set to the game. As we saw with Sonny Bill when he first came across from rugby league though, playing in the midfield in a game of rugby, you've got to cover a lot more miles than you do in rugby league. So, that would be the one factor for me to look out for Ngani Laumapi is just his ability to get around side to side and make his tackles. And, that's going to be the challenge for him. But by all accounts, he's very much up to it and he's learnt the game very quickly or relearnt the game very quickly under the watch of the Hurricanes coaching staff.
So one of the questions we had in the pre-season was around the sevens and how much of time it would take away from Ardie Savea. Have we got a clearer picture on that now?
Yeah, so Ardie Savea has played his 2 tournaments. Obviously he played Wellington and then backed it up in Sydney, and didn't he play well, by the way? Yeah. But now he's with the Hurricanes, mate, until the last 2 tournaments of the Sevens World Series. So that's the final 2 tournaments before Rio, of course. So they're going to get some serious mileage out of Ardie Savea, and what coach in Super Rugby wouldn't want to have Ardie Savea in their team? Look, I think he's one of those guys you put in your fantasy side straight off the bat. He's just a guy who's going to earn you points each week, and he's going to do things that other sevens can't do. And that's the joy of an Ardie Savea. Not only is he a workhorse over the ball, but he does things and pops up in places on a footy field where other sevens just can't. So, if I were picking my fantasy team right now, I would certainly have Ardie as a lock at my 7 for sure.
So going into the weekend, we had Akira Ioane ranked just one higher than Ardie Savea, but I did a little bit of digging over the weekend, a little bit of research, and that final game in the Sevens circuit in London is actually when the Hurricanes are on a bye. So Ardie Savea doesn't actually miss a hell of a lot of time at all.
No, that doesn't have any impact. That's right. Yeah. That's good research from you, Brucey.
Thank you.
That's why you're running the cutter.
Absolutely. www.internet.com.
No, Ardie's good. And look, they've got a good loose forward mix, I think, as well. Via Fafito will keep getting better this season. Victor Vito, in his valedictory season with the Hurricanes, he'll be wanting to go out on a high as well. Mark Abbott at a stretch can cover, and Blade Thompson can cover the loose too. Plus you've got Callum Gibbons, who I think is value for money, Callum Gibbons. He will make every tackle you ask him to make. He has topped the table, the tackle count in ITM Cup Rugby for 2 of the last 3 seasons, beaten out this time by Tim Boys during the 2015 season. But Callum Gibbons gives you plenty of cover and plenty of confidence on the bench too, if indeed he starts on the bench, which I think week 1 he will. So
you touched on a player that we mentioned, a player there, Blade Thompson. Now, so James Broadhurst has got a bit of a knock to his dokie from last season. Who is going to be that locking pairing? Is it Blade Thompson going to come in there? Who's going to be the 2 locks for the Canes? Yeah, well, I think they'll probably settle on Mark Abbott. Mark Abbott's just a guy who's going to get a lot of involvements and a lot of touches in the game. Look, he's not going to eat 60, 70 metres per match, but he's probably going to carry 15 times. He's that sort of player. He plays aggressively. He's not an out-and-out athlete like some of the locks. If you look at a Retallick or a Sam Whitelock, he probably doesn't do the things that they do, but what he does do is he gets in tight and he works really hard to make the gain line, and I think that's what they'll need. He's also very good defensively, certainly in maul defence. So Blade Thompson will naturally slot into lock, I think, in place of Broadhurst, and Abbott will likely come in and slot alongside him, I think, at least to start the season. One of the questions we had last year was who's going to back up Beauden Barrett. There's Oteri Black and James Marshall. Do we have any, clarity on that?
I don't think it's that clear, to be honest with you. James Marshall, started as a reserve, and James is going to give you plenty of versatility. Oteri Black is an out-and-out first 5. So it all depends on your bench structure. Now, the problem with Bodie Barrett starting a game is that he takes so much versatility out of your team selection. That's why the All Blacks, whether he likes it or not, choose him as a bench player because, he is the greatest finisher, I believe, in rugby union at the moment. But he will want that 10 jersey. He does want that 10 jersey. He's made no secret of that fact. And obviously, he found a real groove on the weekend against the Crusaders. So Barrett will start. James Marshall might likely start as some sort of back 3 cover. And I think they'll want to find a place for Aotere Black, although they will bleed him through the season. I don't think Aotere's going to be like Nehi Milner-Skudder and set the world on fire in his first year. But from what I know of Aotere, he's a great kid. He's very confident in his own ability. So they're going to want to give him every opportunity to prove himself without too much pressure.
Competition favourites for mine, the Hurricanes. I think with the final that it was last season, I think people have forgotten how well they did in the regular season and how they topped the ladder kind of going away.
Oh, look, you're quite right. They won more games by far than anyone else last year and certainly played the most aggressive code. Look, I think they're right. In fact, I was just doing pre-season power rankings, and, I certainly had them at number one. That's partly based on that last pre-season performance, but also, the fact that they have got so many game breakers in that team and so many guys who are really fighting hard for All Black spots. Not least of all, the likes of Lini Apasai, who may well be another hooker to watch this season. Victor Vito, who's got something to prove in his final year. Artie Savia, who will go to Rio but really wants to be down as an All Black the following season. TJ Perenara, who maybe lost some ground last year as an All Black halfback. He'll want to fire up again. And Beauden Barrett, as we mentioned, who wants that first 5 starting job for the All Blacks. So lots of guys with lots to prove, and Nehi Milner-Skudder as well, and we know what he can do.
Yeah, I heard he's pretty good.
Yeah, good. Understatement. What a great season for him, though, and look, I know there's some talk about a bit of sophomore syndrome for Nehi, but I don't buy that for a second. I think it's one thing to know what Nehi Milner-Skudder's going to do, it's quite another to stop him doing it.
That's exactly what we said. It's all very well and good making a plan for him, but until he gets slapped in the face, right? I guess, okay, let's move on to the Chiefs. That's enough of the Hurricanes. Probably the biggest outstanding question for the Chiefs is who's going to play in that back three. So, Damian McKenzie, Glenn Fasili'i, and James Lowe. Do you think the Fish will get on the wing? Yeah,
look, I think Glenn Fasili'i has a lot of pace, and he will be a right winger. They'll always play him on the right. James Lowe will likely get the starting job on the left side, and Sam McNichol's another to watch as well. Sam McNichol started against the Blues in that final pre-season hit-out. Sam McNichol has everything the Chiefs want as a left winger. Most of all, he's got a left foot. And, look, that goes back to when Noah was playing for the Chiefs. They want a left-footed left winger, and Sam McNichol's got a great left-foot boot, as does James Lowe. I know from talking to some of the boys within the squad, Sean Stevenson has not disappointed during the pre-season, very confident, and will offer some good coverage on both wing and fullback. But I think that job will go to DMak straight off, and he will start at fullback for the Chiefs. So if I was planning a starting lineup at this stage, I'd be looking very closely at James Lowe, Glenn Fasili'i, and DMak at fullback.
You touched on it there as well. So very underrated part of James Lowe's play is his raking left boot, and they use it quite a lot. A lot of those exit strategies for the Chiefs.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, totally agree. Look, that's a lot of the time they go that way, and we saw it last year. James Lowe not shy of punting the ball down, and they love to kick and chase down that left-hand side. So I don't think too much has changed. Remember, they're going to have a new attacking system under Kieran Kane. So we saw glimpses of Aaron Cruden back to his old ways against the Blues, but I just note with the likes of Charlie Ngatai and Seta Tamanivalu in the midfield and Glenn Fasili'i, there is a slight alteration to the way they hinge and the way they attack the Chiefs. So it'll be interesting to see them play throughout the season.
So I guess moving into that midfield, you've got Charlie Ngatai in there, probably the 12 or 13, depending if Sonny Bill Williams or when he comes back or when he plays.
No, he's not there, Bruce. So you can put away Sonny Bill out of your fantasy draft because Sonny Bill is fully committed to the Sevens this year, so he won't be lacing up for the Chiefs. He's got a full release, as has Liam Messam. So those two boys won't feature at all for the Chiefs this year.
Wow, that's really significant news for a lot of drafters. Very significant. Already drafted.
No, he's not. Well, I think that's exactly right. Look, Seta Tamanivalu, we know how much he can attack. He needs a Charlie Ngatai around him, though, or an Andrew Horrell, someone who can organise him. Seta's biggest issue is rushing out of the line on D. So they're working really hard on Seta to make sure that he doesn't rush too fast and leave that hole between 12 and 13. I thought Seta played pretty well in his time against the Blues, and Charlie Ngatai unfortunately limped off It looked like maybe a calf strain or just a calf nickel. So hopefully he's fit and raring to go for game one, because I think Ngatai Shapes is one of the most important players in this Chiefs side, especially the way Aaron Cruden plays the game. Cruden likes to run the ball, but quite often he doesn't play it at a traditional first receiver role. So that's where you need the likes of Ngatai, Tamani Valu and your wingers to come in and do a lot of the work for Aaron Cruden in terms of carrying in Channel 1.
Yeah, we like Charlie Ngatai. We've always been pretty big fans here. He's got that sneaky pace, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does have sneaky pace, kind of a low-key speedster, isn't he, Charlie Ngatai? Look, what I really want to see from Charlie is just a really good season. Yeah. I called my first game of rugby, which was Charlie Ngatai's debut back in 2009. He's been around a long time. And we're just waiting to see Charlie Ngatai really set the world on fire. I hope he hasn't been beaten up too much, because this is the year of all years for Charlie Ngatai to really show the world what he's got. I know he's pretty keen to do that. Just hopefully his body can sustain the season.
True. I guess looking at the loose forwards, I guess Michael Leach is going to come back a little bit late, a couple of weeks into the season.
No, Michael Leach won't be there for the first couple of games. Sam Cane starts, obviously, as co-captain. I think Mama Vaipulu will come back into 8 if fit. And you've also got cover there from Tavita Kaloa-Matangi, who can play 8 and 6, and Johan Bardul, who certainly did not embarrass himself last year. Probably one of their most exciting signings, I think, is Taleni Siu, who came out of the Auckland ITM Cup team last year. This is a player to watch for the future. I think Taleni Siu has got some real ability. He's rugged, he's also very athletic, but I think if they wanted to go traditional in their first up crack against the Crusaders, you couldn't really go past a guy like Yogi Bardul to start at least at 6. They tried Tom Sanders, the new signing up from Canterbury, at number 8 against the Blues, and I don't know if that experiment really worked for them. I think Sanders is much more comfortable on the side of the scrum, so maybe Sanders was just filling the gap left by Mama Vaipulu, and I'm not entirely sure if Vaipulu is back fit and ready to go for this week, but I think they'll be hoping he is, because he can damage people, Mama Vaipulu.
Okay, let's move north and to the Blues. There's some buzz here, isn't there?
Isn't there some buzz about this team? Wonderful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's from everything I've sound, a few recruits, Tana Umanga making the right sounds and right noises. He seems to have gelled that team certainly a lot more than the sounds that was coming out when Kerwin was here. You've been in and around. Is that what you see too?
Well, look, I've already said on radio a couple of times during the week that there is absolutely zero comparison to me about where the Blues are now and where they were this time last year. Look, I don't think, I think it's palpably obvious that Sir John Kerwin didn't work out as a coaching choice for the Blues. Probably couldn't give the team the detail they wanted. Tana Umanga is a very different man to John Kerwin. He's not interested in being a spokesperson for the club. He's not interested in marketing Blues jerseys. He's not interested in talking up Auckland City. All he is interested in doing is coaching a team. He's a rookie Super Rugby coach. Let's not forget that. And 3 of his 5 coaches are new to Super Rugby this year. Paul Feeney, another, and Alistair Rogers, who may well have spent 7 years with the All Blacks analysing clips. But, in terms of grass time for Al Rogers, this is a new venture for him. What I can say, and I have spent a lot of time around the team because I do live in Auckland City and I've been down to their trainings quite a few times and various other functions. Look, it's a very good atmosphere there. The players are feeling very confident. They've won all 3 of their pre-season games. And again, we go back to that theory that pre-season doesn't really matter. I think it mattered greatly to the Blues. To give them some confidence heading into round 1. They won't have their captain, Jerome Kona. We know he's been suspended for the so-called punch on Paulie Asimanu. Suspended more because he connected as opposed to intended to punch him, which is fair enough. Paulie Asimanu was knocked out. I can understand where the judiciary's come from, but really disappointing for the Blues. And that's going to give them a real lift, I think, because they're going to want to go out there at Eden Park. And I think Tana Umanga has told them this too. And they got to go out fizzing. So, in terms of great openers for Super Rugby, this Chiefs Highlanders match is going to be a classic, mate.
Yeah, indeed. I guess one of the questions we had was the makeup of that back 3. There's a lot of players in there. They've got Duffy and they've got Malani Nanai. They've got Visanier as well. Is Visanier going to start at fullback or who's going to be?
No, I think they start Duffy.
Really?
Duffy straight into the team. He got straight into the leadership group. He's great aerially, very good at diffusing a high ball, and good on a kick chase as well. He's got a pretty good boot on him too, Matt Duffy, and some real elusiveness as well that I think comes from attacking from the back as he has done for so long with the Melbourne Storm. He operated on the wing there at the Storm predominantly, but he had some great players to watch while he waited for his turn. He slotted in really, really well, so I'm excited about what Matt Duffy can do. I think Lamb will get a chance straight off the back. Right. They've also got Rieko Ioane. What do you do with Rieko Ioane? Do you play him on the wing? Do you bring him in a bit closer to the action? I'm not entirely sure yet, but you wouldn't really want to go into a game without him, I don't think. Rieko Ioane is an absolute game breaker in my eyes. And then you've got the talent of Malani Nanai and Lalangi Visania to back up as well. But I think if you're looking straight fullback at the moment, they will give Matt Duffy the first crack at it.
That's interesting. I know Mossman drafted Lalangi Visania, and his thought was that, well, he's going to play somewhere in the back three anyway.
Oh, definitely. I think Lalangi will definitely be in there, and I think this year's crucial for Lalangi Visania. He's been around the scene for a long time now, comparatively, and he needs a year in which he can play some good mistake-free code. One of the concerns for Visania is he's got a great boot, but really does he use it? He's had a couple of times for Auckland over the last 18 months where, his kicking game has been out the window, and which is a real shame because when Lalangi's on his game, he's very hard to defend. So, no, I wouldn't be too surprised if quite a few people have put Visania in there just to see what he can do.
He's got a big boot, didn't he? We mentioned that last season, big boot, but he just loves to take contact. Yeah, he does, and that's one of the areas where the Blues may just have to work themselves out a bit this year because George Moala's another one who will always be good for, 80, 100 metres in a game. But it's just that final pass that seems to elude George. So, we saw it again a little bit against the Chiefs. He makes the gain line pretty much every single play. I think he's a value for money player and I'd be thinking about drafting him pretty hard at 12. But his combination with Rennie Ranger, and also Mully Sal. Now, if you want to go for an old smoky in your team, I don't think you can go past Mully Sal as a pretty good bet. I don't know if they're going to start him. Given Rennie's form in that last pre-season game, I wouldn't be surprised if Tana Umaga is seriously thinking about putting Mully Sal in the starting lineup this week. He is an absolute weapon, and I think it'd be good for a few points fantasy-wise this year. Yeah, we listened to your podcast with Sean Maloney on the Fox Sports guys, and we particularly liked the description of rearranging, I believe it is. Yeah,
there is some definite rearranging going on. Oh, look, Rennie will damage you, and so will George. I know that Rennie's coming back from injury and coming back from a long time out of the game. Very good culture man at the team, Rennie Ranger. The boys love him. He just needs to transfer that now into a real first-up performance for Tana Umaga. If he can put a marker down in game one, then look out world, because that midfield is going to be something to savour all year long, unless you're the poor bastards having to tackle them.
That's right. That's going to be quite a blockbuster opener, isn't it? Fekitoa, Thompson, Moala, and rearranging.
Sure, yeah, it certainly is. It's going to be all on, and that brings us to the crucial question, isn't it, around who gives them the ball. And, look, they're going to start Ihai West. I don't think there's any doubt about that. West will be Tana's go-to guy to start the game. What I've really enjoyed watching West do in the pre-season, Brucey, is take it to the line. And I think that's going to be part of the attack plan for the Blues, because if West can give the ball on the gain line, that gives the likes of George Moala and Rennie Ranger plenty of opportunity to break through and bend the line, if not tear it apart. Yeah. So I've seen Ihai take on the line quite a few times in pre-season now, and he looks very comfortable doing that. I think the attack plan under Kerwin was to stand a lot deeper in the pocket, and even if it wasn't Kerwin's plan, it's certainly where West was. And if they can bring up Matt McGahn closer to the line as well, I think they'll have a couple of decent first fives. I don't think their 9s and 10s are as bad as people are making out. Big season for Bryn Hall, and he's got some good competition too from Billy Guyton. Billy Guyton might not be fashionable in the eyes of many people, but he's a real competitor around the squad. And he's pushing Bryn Hall pretty hard week by week.
Yeah, there's no doubting Ihai West's talent, right? I think last year he just got mucked around a little bit by JK. With Dan Bowden there, he was kind of stopping and starting. He never really got a string of games together, and I think it just undermined his confidence quite a lot.
No, 100%, absolutely 100%. And Ihai is a confidence player, we know that. But you cannot look at Ihai West and say the guy hasn't got game. I mean, he's got yams, that kid, and we've seen that time and time again at provincial level. I know we're talking about a tournament in which the time for first fives is cut down markedly, but I would put a caveat here. a lot of people talk about having a good 9 and 10 and you can't win this competition without it. But I'm yet to find the one guy who said that at the start of last season, Mo-unga was going to be an All Black. But week in, week out, having good service from your halfback and good carriers on the outside, that can help a first five. So if Ehire West can get similar support around him, there's no reason why he can't advance this Blues course. The other thing about the Blues too, when you're thinking about your draft, yes, they've got a few derbies straight up off the bat. In fact, 3 New Zealand derbies straight away. But they only leave the country once in the first 6 weeks, and that's to go and play the Reds. And that Reds team is an absolute rabble. So, if you're thinking about the Blues and their start to the year, I mean, they only do 6,000 kilometres in the first 6 weeks, so it's not too bad for them in terms of a travel schedule. So they need to bank some points early, and I'm pretty sure they'll be aware of that too.
So who's going to play an open side flanker? Is it going to be Blake Gibson or Latimer?
Well, Taniro's not going to be back till week 6, unfortunately, so you can strike him out of your early season planning. Taniro is there really as a bit of a koro in the team, a bit of a figurehead. That's not to say he can't play code, because we all know he can. But I think they'll give Gibson a shout first up. The loss of Jerome Kano for this first week may force Tana Umaunga's hand to bring Akira Ioane in straight away. Stephen Luatua is playing some very good football at the moment as well. So I think what they may do is chuck Akira Ioane in at 8 and Luatua at 6 and certainly give Blake Gibson a crack to start. There's out and out straight 7 cover as Cutter Pryor. But I think they will probably see him as a finisher as opposed to a starter.
Yeah, so JK's suspension kind of saves Umaunga from having to make the choice between Ioane and Luatua in the first game.
Well, that's exactly right. And how he manages that loose forward trio is going to be really interesting because they've got plenty of depth there. Luatua is on a mission to reclaim his All Black spot. Jerome Kano has been given the captain's armband, so that's going to mean he lifts his game this year. I have no doubt about that. And you've got Blake Gibson, who was unfortunately injured in ITM Cup, so we never got to see the best of him. And then, yes, as you say, you got Joe Edwards in your wider training group, Cutter Pryor and Akira Ioane as well. So, there's some genuine game breakers in that loose forward trio for the Blues, and a lot of chance to rotate those players throughout the season.
Okay, so that's probably enough about the mighty Blues. I guess from a more of a competition point, from an overall structure and what Sanzar have done, what's your take? What's your view on Super Rugby?
Well, Bruce, I know it's not perfect. I know in an ideal world that, they probably wanted just Argentina to come in this year and have a 17-team competition. South Africans was a non-negotiable. They needed 6 teams, so that was always going to happen. South Africa cut a lot of sway in this comp and Sanzar itself. So the Japan thing was a kind of we need an 18th team because my understanding they couldn't make a 17-team competition work within the parameters that the competition has to exist within. So, it is what it is. It's not ideal. There is a little bit of imbalance between conferences, but I think once we get up and running and start to see how this takes shape, I think people will enjoy it again. They'll certainly enjoy the conference matches. And I think from a New Zealand perspective, it's good that every New Zealand team plays every Australian team because that brings a little bit of balance to proceedings as well.
Yeah, look, so we didn't mind it so much. We thought it was inevitable, to try and keep the players down in this part of the world, to keep the wages where to expand the game. And those who've watched American style will understand the conference side of things. No,
that's right, Bruce. This way at least they'll cycle through every team every 2 years. If you look at the NFL, and I've made mention of this in columns in the past, that's the most convoluted structure you could ever hope to wish for in a sporting tournament. It's the most successful in the world. And you don't play every team, you only play every team over a 4-year period. So, that's a lot of gap between matches, isn't it, for various clubs in the NFL. So, I think, it'll settle down pretty much after this opening week. And I think the opening week has been well scheduled too. There's some great matchups to start us off. So hopefully when a tackle's made in anger, mate, we will get to settle down and just enjoy the code.
Yeah, we're pumped. We're really stoked. We can't wait for some rugby to actually be played. In terms of fantasy rugby, there's 4 more days for fantasy rugby draft. So log in, and if you haven't jumped into a league yet, join a league that's drafting in the next few days, so you have enough time to prepare for the season. I guess while we've got you here, Scotty, there's one more question that we need to settle a bit for at FRD Towers. Elton Yankees, Elton John, Elton Flatley, or Michael Flatley?
Great question. I'm going EJ, mate. I'm going the great Elton John. Saw him live in Wellington. What a pro. What a pro.
Fair. So that's one for Elton John and one for Michael Flatley.
Who's the Riverdance fan? That's what I want to know. Who's the Riverdance fan?
That's a good question. It's Mossman. He's got the happy feet.
There you go. Well, there you go. Hey, Bruce, it's been a pleasure to be with you, mate. Thanks for having me.
No, the pleasure's all ours. Absolutely. You've provided us with some really great tidbits there for our fantasy rugby draft managers. They're going to be very appreciative.
No worries at all, mate. Thanks for having me, buddy.
So thanks for downloading and listening. My name's Bruce Hawkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
Oh, I think just with the uncertainty, it'll be Natai. It probably would have been Natai anyway, to be fair.
How would you repeat it?
What a bust here by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support, and what a